yeah, this if you complete this course and then you get a job within 6 months, then you've got to pay, I think it was like 15 or 10K or some number like that. And at that point, I had applied to so many roles. I'd gone through a boot camp. I was starting to sort of doubt myself, thinking, can I really get into the tech industry because there's so much competition? It's taken so long. And then that's when I reached out to different people. So I remember calling you, calling a bunch of friends, careers people, and then I had to basically decide between following through with the interviews that I had and the different internships that I had, or going through with this boot camp, taking a step back.
This is Nahom, aka Data with Noms. He is one of my closest friends, and he has recently broken into the tech industry. Nahom does not have a tech background. His degree was in civil engineering, but he decided that he was going to get into tech and spent lots of time grinding, learning, and getting into data. He's now a data analyst and Braze manager, and he shared his journey with us on this episode. He has also recently started sharing his journey on YouTube, and he's joining us on the podcast today. In this episode, you will learn about data analytics and why you should choose data as an area of tech to focus on. You will learn about the biggest pros and cons of the tech industry. You will also hear advice on getting into tech from someone who has just done this very recently. And you will hear Nahom's incredible story and his journey getting into tech. However, there is one thing that I just have to tell you guys. The channel is in need of your support. Since this podcast has been released, we've had so many incredible guests. Some have been high profile guests, others have been people who have recently broken into tech, others are well experienced tech professionals. We've had an incredible range. But to continue attracting these professionals to the channel, we need you to like and subscribe and engage with the content. Your subscription, your likes and your comments go way further than you might think. And they truly allow us to do so much more with this podcast. Now go ahead and do those things, and let's get right into the episode. First things first, I'll just ask you to give an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Nahom. I'm a CRM Braze manager at a fintech company, so it's a startup. I graduated from my master's in civil engineering last year, and I didn't enjoy it. I hated it. So I specialized in like foundations, soil mechanics, which I didn't enjoy. So I decided to, get into the tech industry instead of going to an engineering role. So I had an engineering role lined up actually last September. So I just spent the last year just learning tech skills, trying out new things. Eventually ended up in a data internship at the startup that I'm currently working in. And then, recently got promoted to our CRM Braze manager. And Braze it's basically like a customer engagement platform. So every email, SMS, push notification that you get from a brand, that's all managed through the Braze system. So I was basically hired to fully utilize that platform. That's a brief intro.
Amazing. I appreciate that intro. Some of the interesting things that have already come up in your story is, firstly, you studied civil engineering at university?
I did.
And you went from that to data. What made you change from wanting to go into that area and even having a role lined up in civil engineering to doing the hard work of grinding and getting into tech?
So I already knew halfway through my master's that I didn't want to do engineering anymore. And I spoke to different engineers who were well within their career already. And I spoke to them and they basically told me, Nahom, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then just switch industry or change careers now, because 5-6 years down the line, if you try and change, it's just going to be a lot harder and a lot more painful. So if you don't like what you're doing, then they advised that I change then and there. So I just took their advice, essentially. I just thought I might as well find something that I enjoy doing, rather than just doing a career that I've done a course in, if that makes sense, just for the sake of it. So that was my main motivation. So after I heard their advice, I just thought, okay, let me just take time. I'm still young. I still have time to figure things out, so why not just take some time to, figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I landed up in this role I'm now.
Amazing. And it's an amazing journey. And I've been able to witness the journey myself, as of course Nahom is one of my closest friends. So one thing I just want to talk about, which you mentioned again, is the process. How did you get into data? What did you study? How did you go from, graduate civil engineering? Walk me through that journey of civil to tech and data.
Yeah, so when I graduated, I had to figure out what I wanted to do within the tech industry. I did some data within my course in terms of like my dissertation and stuff. So I thought, okay, let me just pick data, see what happens with that. So this is what I've done. I don't recommend doing this, but this is just how my journey was throughout the past year. So I started off doing different certifications, watching your YouTube videos and watching other people's YouTube videos as well. So I've done the Google Data Analytics certification and the Azure Data Fundamentals, which is the DP900, I think it's called.
Yep.
And it was through that I learned most of the fundamentals and the theory. So learning the basics about what data is, what a data analyst does, the basic skills needed to become one. So learning skills like Excel, SQL, Tableau, just going through it and just learning what it means to be a good data analyst. So that took about 2 to 3 months. I think the average amount was about 6 months, but I really wanted to progress into this because obviously all my colleagues and everyone around me had started working either from the engineering degree or just through in different industries. So I was keen on starting. So yeah, pretty much day in, day out, I was just banging out the certifications. So that took about 3 months from September to December. And then, yeah, from January, I just started applying to every role that I could see, any role that had data analyst, anything related to what I saw during my certification, I applied. So I was probably doing 50 applications a week, most likely.
Wow.
And then after a month or two, I quickly realized that I'm not gonna get accepted anywhere because I'm literally competing against people who have done data degrees, who have been doing projects for years, who are a lot more experienced than me. So I realized that my strategy at the time is just not gonna work out. Me randomly applying to everywhere with the same CV, no cover letter. Originally it made sense because I thought, okay, it's just a numbers game. The more you apply, at least, eventually you'll get one. But yeah, no, that wasn't the case. So I decided to switch strategies from February. So that's when I started building a portfolio, so just doing different projects based on the certifications that I'd done, and then started focusing on applying for different boot camps. And that's when I found a boot camp called Rockborn. So that was like a month boot camp, and they just taught me all the essentials to do with being a data analyst. So it's basically everything I'd done in the Google data analyst certification, but more on the practical side. So we had presentations every week, stakeholder management, being able to present that to the data coaches in the company. And yes, after I'd done a boot camp, I started to apply to startup companies rather than big companies. And I know that with startup companies, they're more willing to hire people who don't have as much experience, they're able to grow, and I'm also be able to be in a place where I can make a meaningful contribution as well. So I started applying to startups, internships, smaller companies. And yeah, after a month of applying, I was able to find the internship that I did over the summer. And then, through the internship, a manager from another team saw how I was working and just decided to recommend me a role in the commercial team rather than the data ops team, but still doing similar work. And then, which I then accepted after a few weeks during the internship, which was good. So that's a brief summary.
Really cool, really cool. And of course, it takes a while to do all of that you just said. What is the time frame that you went from when you started trying to get into data to getting that job?
So I think in all it took me about 9 months. And I think a lot of it was because I went about it the wrong way. I think if I went about it the right way, then it would have taken me about 3 to 6 months. But it took me about 9 months overall to get from no experience whatsoever, no data degree, not knowing how to use SQL, Excel, all of that, to being able to get into a data internship and yeah, becoming a data analyst in the startup that I'm at now.
Amazing, amazing. And one thing that I kind of wanted to touch on from what you said as well is how you started applying for startups. Um, I think there's a really interesting kind of. I mean, you mentioned that startups were more willing to hire people with no experience. It's funny because I kind of see it both ways. I see like huge companies hire people with no experience but like potential, and a lot of the times people who don't have like degrees in tech, they'll hire them for the tech role
Yeah.
because they see their academic experience and they're like, yeah, I could we could train them up and they'd be good at whatever they do because we just think that yeah, they'd be great at this. And the same way with startups, I suppose it depends what startup you're going for. But there are startups that are willing to train. There are also startups that are not willing to train and are looking for someone who really, has some form of experience and understanding of what they're doing. So I suppose it is a balance between like the numbers game and where you're searching, and it's amazing to see how your journey has gone and how you've ended up where you are. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
and I just wanted to point out, so I think it was also based on like my degree and where I was at, in terms of how much knowledge that I had, because I agree that bigger companies do train people with no experience, but um, I realized that they generally picked people who went to better universities or like top grades. So my university wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. My grades weren't the best, but it wasn't the worst. It was like very average. So I
mm,
think that played a major role. So me going to like towards start was more strategic because I'm able to build personal relationships even before having the role, and then through that they're giving me the opportunity and chance to like get my foot in the door essentially, and then to grow within the company.
amazing,
If that makes sense.
super super cool. And I want to ask, why data? I mean, switching from civil engineering to tech, you had so many
Yeah.
options to go for, but you chose data and data analytics specifically. So why did you choose data out of all of the options you could have chosen to work on?
Yes, I think when I graduated, I saw three choices. So there's the software engineering route, there was data, and then there was like cybersecurity. I knew that just for experience, I didn't want to be sitting all day coding. It just wasn't for me. So that just ruled out software engineering instantly. Then it was between data and cyber security that I saw and I had an interest in. And then, like I said before, I had data aspects within my course. I was already building upon that, and I enjoyed that the most. And I realized at that point, I didn't want to sit down and just keep thinking about where I would want to go. Because even within data, you can be a data engineer, a data scientist, a data analyst. So I just wanted to pick one and then run with it and see what happens. So I just picked the one that I had the most experience in and the one that I most enjoyed, and then yeah, went from there. And then, worst case scenario, if I didn't enjoy it, I would just switch to another avenue in tech.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Really cool. And I also wanted to ask you, throughout this journey that you've gone on, I suppose 9 months, and then recently, working in tech for the past couple months, from your knowledge and experience, what are the biggest pros and cons of this industry? I mean, one of the biggest pros and one of the biggest cons. What would you say?
Yeah, I think if I'm being real, I think the biggest pro is definitely the money that you can get in the tech industry. Um, Even looking at the contract that I had when I potentially was going to become a civil engineer and the contract I have now, it's definitely a big difference. That's
Mm,
definitely pro. Um, I think one con is definitely how fast paced it can be and how it can always that it's always changing. So from a month ago when I first started this round till now, there's about 20 new features in the software that I'm trying to specialize in from when I first began. So I really started, I was like, okay, I'm starting to understand everything. And then I go to an event and I find out there's like 20 new features that I now have to learn. I know that next year is going to be way more features, way more things to learn. So it's something that I'm always going to have to be constantly learning in and constantly evolving in, because as you know, tech is always evolving. So yeah, but I guess you can see it both ways, a pro and a con, because you know, if you like to learn, then it's a pro, but it could be a con because you're always going to have to learn
Yeah.
throughout your career. So those are two that come
Yeah.
to mind.
Honestly, that's similar with me. When I talk about like the con of working in this industry, the main thing I go to is like just have to keep learning new stuff non-stop. So
Yeah.
for me especially, like I just remember like when I first started, almost every project being like a completely different thing, and you don't always have like a document to tell you how to do this, or someone to tell you how to do this. Rather, you've got to go do the research and figure it out yourself and then implement that
Yeah.
thing. So that was like one of the cons, but also it was more of a con like for me being like it was a con in a way that I don't want to have to keep learning, but it was a pro as well, like you said, in a way that this learning is really helping me to be a lot better and be a much better engineer. Like I'm learning new things all the time. I'm growing in I'm building my portfolio, growing in my knowledge and understanding and technical ability. So there was a real balance to that one. We've just launched a free cloud engineer assessment to evaluate and assess your current skills on your path to becoming a cloud professional. Now, when you take this assessment, it provides some incredible recommendations for your path. And remember, this is completely free. It costs you nothing. It only helps you on your journey. So if this interests you and you are an aspiring cloud professional, definitely take this assessment. I'm going to leave a link to it. Here's an example of me taking it myself and getting some pretty good recommendations from my own assessment. So guys, check this out, and I hope this is really helpful. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. So another question that I want to roll into is about the most important skills to have in the data industry. But before that, let's talk about what advice you'd give to someone who is trying to get into data.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is when you're applying for jobs, not to just send out general CVs, which is what I was doing. So when a recruiter sees your CV, they're going to be able to tell how much effort you put in it. And if it doesn't relate to the criteria in the job description, then it's going to be really bait. I think the second thing is learning the fundamental skills needed in what you want to learn and knowing what you want to do as well. So if you want to be in data, like where in data do you want to work? Is it an engineer? Is it a scientist? Is it an analyst? And then figuring out the skills you need to become an analyst, and then really learning the fundamentals, because that's what the recruiters and the managers are going to appreciate. Because if you don't know your stuff, then obviously they're not going to hire you. I think another thing is applying what you've learned through projects. That's a big one. So when they ask you different questions, you're able to talk through how you've applied what you've learned, and it just shows that you're capable of doing the work that the job requires you to do. I think another thing is consistency, just with applying for roles and getting through all the skills needed for the role. It can be tough, especially when you don't get things. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I think at first I was kind of reluctant. I was like, I want to do this, I want to get this done myself. But I realized the more I asked for help, the quicker I was able to get the answers, and the quicker I was able to get the work done, whether that's careers help, reaching out to different people, YouTubers like yourself. I'm sure you've helped out so many different people within the past 2 years. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. People are nicer than you think.
That's a good one. People are nicer than you think. So let's talk a
Yeah,
little
bro.
bit about the most important skills in the data industry. Like, what are those bits of technology that are super common for roles? And if it's not bits of technology, maybe it's soft skills that are necessary for someone working in the data industry.
Yeah, I think some soft skills that are quite important is having a logical and kind of like a mathematical mindset. I think that's a big one that I've realized, and that's one that my manager was looking out for when he was trying to hire me. Communication is obviously a big one. Being able to communicate the data that you're presenting, being able to communicate the data to non-technical people as well, being able to
Yep.
articulate that in a way for them to understand. Then you've got the actual skills like Excel, SQL, and then some sort of reporting tool, whether that be Power BI or Tableau. So I think if you have the fundamentals in those three, then you're pretty much good to go. And yeah, I'll say those things are the most important if you want to get into data. And if you have those things and you're able to have a good strategy with applying for jobs, then yeah, you should be good.
Amazing, amazing. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure a lot of the audience who are trying to get into this space, trying to get into the data industry, will really appreciate that as well. Now, let's jump into my favorite question of the podcast. I asked this question to so many people, and I've got so many really interesting answers. Some have been pretty hilarious. Others have been real serious, but we've had a laugh about most of them. So the question
Fair
is,
enough.
what is an interesting career story that you share with the audience today? It could be interesting in a really good way. You did something great, or it could be interesting in a bad way. So what is an interesting career story that you'll share with the audience today?
An interesting story that comes to mind is when I nearly fumbled the bag with this role. Yeah.
Mm.
So this was this must have been back in May. So this is after I completed the boot camp and I had a few interviews for different internships and different startups. And then a boot camp reached out to me, and this boot camp basically said, if you join this boot camp, it's a 10-week course. If you complete this
I'm
course,
laughing. I'm laughing because I know the story. So
yeah,
go.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, if you complete this course, and then you get a job within 6 months, then you've got to pay, I think it was like 15 or 10K or some number like that. And at that point, I had applied to so many roles. I'd gone through a boot camp. I was starting to sort of doubt myself, thinking, can I really get into the tech industry because there's so much competition? It's taken so long. And then that's when I reached out to different people. So I remember calling you, calling a bunch of friends, careers people, and then I had to basically decide between following through with the interviews that I had and the different internships that I had, or going through with this boot camp, taking a step back, and then seeing if I can get a job through the boot camp because they were partnered with different companies, or maybe just applying different roles when I had more skills, essentially. But yeah, no, in the end, I decided to just put trust in myself and go for the interviews and declined the offer to join the boot camp. And then yeah, it was literally like a week afterwards where I had the final interview for the internship that I had over the summer, and then obviously through the internship is how I got this role now. So I nearly fumbled the bag. That's my
Nah,
interesting story.
it's a funny story, like, and I remember it so well because
Yeah,
Nahom at this point was probably applying to 50 roles a week, like you said, and
crazy numbers. Yeah,
at this point it'd been a couple months, and I feel like for all of us, that have been through that job search, we start to get a little bit more like, I'll take anything, like I'll like
exactly.
I
You get
don't
very desperate. Yep.
Yep, exactly. And this was kind of like the point that you were at, but it was like they're telling you that if you get the job through them, you're gonna have to pay what? 15K.
It's a
What's
ridiculous number.
that?
Ridiculous number. Yeah.
But it was at a point where you were really considering it because of how tough the job market was at the time. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad that
Exactly.
you took my
Yeah.
advice
So
and
am I.
surely other people's advice not to do that and to go
Yeah.
ahead
No,
and
facts.
keep grinding and you got the role that you you deserved.
Yeah. No, exactly. I'm glad I took that chance. But like you said, it's really tough, and the state of mind that you can get to after applying so many roles after a while is tough as well. So I hope that encourages people to keep going and not
Yeah,
to give up.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely will. And I know that, of course, there's a lot of people who, I mean, most of the people who follow this channel are people trying to get into tech. They're doing those applications, they're applying. Definitely a lot of people watching this would have been applying for a long period of time and have not got in. I got a comment on a video like yesterday of someone saying,
Yeah.
"I've given up. I've been trying for months."
I don't blame him.
No,
I don't blame
there's
him,
like
honestly.
they were like, "I've given up. I've
Yeah.
been working hard for months and months. I'm not gonna get in. I'm doing something else." And I was like, "Listen, um, it's a difficult journey, especially when you're going from a background that is not tech. It's not an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of commitment to go from yeah to go from a non-tech background into the tech industry. So it's
Yeah.
really hard, and I appreciate that. You know, you're able to do that, and you're able to encourage people that it's possible, it's done. Nahom did it. So loads of people have done it. They've just put in the work and been patient over a long period of time.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's all it is. I think I was prepared and an opportunity came and then yeah, I got the role. But if you're not prepared and opportunity comes, then you might, you've got to fumble. So you've got to always be prepared even though you don't know an opportunity is coming. Because so when the opportunity does come, you'll be prepared. Because at that point I didn't have a clue that this role was coming up. But I was prepared through the different certifications, projects, interviews, everything that I'd done up to that point. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing, bro. And one of the last questions that I want to ask you is about your channel. You started a channel recently, sharing some of your journey and how you've been finding, the training you've been doing and advice on the jobs that you've been applying for and how others can do the same. And I wanted to just ask you about what inspired you to share that content and how you found creating content online and on YouTube.
Yeah, no. So there's two reasons why I started the channel. The first was more just for myself, so I can document my journey on everything that I've learned, just so I can see myself grow over the years. So that was one of the major reasons. The second reason was to help people basically become a channel what I would have wanted to watch while I was going through the journey of trying to find a job, essentially. So when I was
Yeah.
trying to find a job, what videos would I have appreciated? What videos would I have wanted to see? What would have helped me? And then yeah, just sharing that, hoping that someone can take that away, apply it to their journey, and hopefully get their role or whatever their goal was within the tech industry or career in general. I've got a lot of different stuff in the channel. I've got some walkthroughs on different projects. I've got job strategies and how I got my internships, different things that I've done, how I stood out, my journey through interviews as well, progressing through that, learning what is how to have a good interview. Some stories about my manager and why she hired me with the data internship, which I'll say quickly. But I had a one-to-one meeting with her, and she told me that in the internship she had gone through 500 CVs, and the reason why yeah, no, I was shocked as well. And the reason why she hired me was for three reasons. So the first was she wanted someone who had the technical ability to do the job, which is fair enough. The second reason was having something outside of, I guess, tech, which shows that you're passionate about something, as they wanted to hire someone who would is not just doing the job for the job, but is doing the job because they actually is something that they want to pursue a career in, essentially. So in my case, it was because of a business that I started throughout this last year, an e-commerce business, and
Wow.
a
Yeah.
society that I founded in university. So she saw those things and basically said, okay, the fact that you've shown passion in something outside of what you're doing in your career means that you're doing this for um, good reasons and because you actually want to do this rather than, just for the money or just because, basically. And yeah, and then the third reason is just culture. So that being able to have a good relationship with the the manager as well, and being a good fit within the company. So yeah, it's just pushing those kind of points on my channel and just ways to stand out. Because yeah, you have to stand out. If you come from a non-tech background, you ain't got no experience, you're gonna have to do different stuff to what everyone else is doing who does have experience or a data degree to get a foot in the door. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's really good. And yeah, I appreciate what you mentioned in when you spoke about, your manager, looking at, your business that you started, and, the community that you started at university, and looking at these things as, yeah, I would choose him over other people. I just highlights how competitive it is, and how really little things, not little things that there's a little, but there are certain things that you see on a CV that make you stand out, because there are so
Yeah,
many CVs. Like you said, 500 CVs. Your manager reviewed 500 CVs. That's
it's a
probably
lot.
like really common these days. Like, that's not out of the ordinary. Pretty much most roles will be getting that many CVs in the door. So having those things that can make you stand out, that can be transferable from other industries, even, is super important. Nahom, thank you so much for joining me on the Tech Certified podcast, my bro. I really appreciate it. I know you've been on the channel like a couple of times in different videos, but it's good for like
Yep,
the
yeah.
audience to finally be able to speak to you, like hear what you're actually saying, like hear your journey on this channel as well. So really, really appreciate you being on, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Pleasure to be on here. Been a fan since day one. I remember seeing your first video, very different to what it looks like now. So excited to see what you're going to be doing these next few years.
Yes, yes. Nahom is probably the second or third subscriber on this channel. There's at the point of recording this video, it's almost at 17K. So you are second place out of 17K. Well, no, I appreciate you being around, bro. So,
No, I appreciate it,
to
bro.
yeah, of course. So to end off, yeah, anything you want to shout out and share to the audience, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so just my channel, Day with Noms. I'm going to be trying to post consistently just about my journey, ways to help you guys find different roles or progress in the data industry. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Data with Noms.
Amazing. And the channel will be linked in the description of this video, Data with Noms. So go check that out. Guys, go subscribe. Nahom's been on the journey very recently.
Yep.
And for those who are on that journey, watch those videos. They are really, really good and really helpful. Thanks so much for being on the channel. And everyone, I'll see you in the next video, the next podcast episode. Peace.